welcome to our webcast, to the Think Lead webcast, where we help people or leaders think and lead on a whole new level. So exceptionally important in today's world. Mic's off, of course, until we certainly want any questions to put them in the chat box. Those of us who are now here and who will join us, and you can raise your hand at any time, of course. Gordana, Gordana is sort of she's a thinker, an author, a leader, an influencer, almost want to say a modern day philosopher. She influences thousands of people every single day in challenging their thinking, in encouraging them to think and to discover themselves more and more, to bring out their best self. And that's why the conversation is so exceptionally apt to talk about self-leadership. I just want to take a moment, and before we kick off with Gordana, welcome Gordana. It's great to have you. It's not our first conversation, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adrian, for having me. And yes, it's not our first conversation. We've had a lot of conscious conversations, you and me.
Yeah, and I think if conversations are just conversations, maybe it's not always the best thing, but when they're conscious conversations, that really, really makes a difference. It can bring about huge change, deep change, real change. I'm going to just tell people who's going to watch now and in the future, no doubt, I just want to share with you why we do this. This is a Think Lead webcast, and here's the reason why we do it. When we look at the state of leadership in the world, the question is the world producing better or worse leaders in politics and business? And we asked this question on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And I love asking people what they think the answer to this is. Of course, it's a very strong perceptual question. And this is the answer invariably. 76 to 86% people vote that the world is producing worse leaders. And then we get on with our lives, which is a very dangerous thing to do because the impact of this is clearly visible in the world. And we're not going to discuss that now. But this is the perceptual survey that we did, or a poll. And then we decided to look at some other more scientific polls or surveys. And this one is very relevant. 82% managers and executives are seen by their direct reports as lacking in leadership qualities and skills. So, not a good statistic. And also 75% of working adults say the most stressful aspect of their job is their immediate boss. So that made it very clear for us a while back already that leadership is in a much worse state than we instinctively felt, having been in the game for the last 20 years. So we have no doubt that we need leaders who are ready for a new standard of excellence. We need a different mindset. We can't continue doing what we've always done, expecting different results. We have to do things differently. And we're trying to mobilize those leaders who are ready for this new standard of excellence, this different mindset, a new way of getting to that standard. So it's fine if we say the standard of excellence in this world now is the following. Well, how do we get there? And it's almost like we're looking at a movement, Gordana. We need a movement in the world. I know you've got your movement going very effectively, but we need a even broader movement potentially to make a difference. And a little later in our conversation, if we have a moment, I'm going to ask you to just go through it, ask our participants now and in the future, to simply go through a 10-point almost questionnaire for themselves to see if they are ready for this new leadership standard of excellence. If they personally are ready, do they have the right mindset? And are they willing to accept this new way of getting to this type of leader that we need in our world? And I'll be doing that a little later. So let me just stop sharing here and go back. All right, Gordana, what is self? Let's just have a headline, if I can call it definition, of what self-leadership is. What would you say to us?
I would say that self-leadership is very much about being present in the moment between stimuli and response. Knowing how to self-regulate in that moment, giving yourself the time to be present when there is a trigger before you react.
Okay.
Because all the knowledge about yourself actually is embedded in the moment between the stimuli and the response.
Yeah.
Reality out there is not static. You're creating it as you go, which means that you cannot relax in it and expect that it will turn out the same every time. So you have to be present in the now moment and being able to give yourself time to stop, give yourself time and to look at what's happening between the trigger and your reaction to it. Knowing what is mine and what is yours. And when you know that, you are also able to discern the truth of the situation, regardless of what the situation is. So that would be self-leadership, knowing yourself, being present in the stillness between stimuli and response.
Yeah, I mean, that's a high standard of self-leadership, isn't it? It's a very behavioral one. I had a case now. I was trying to very quickly, before the webcast, share something with my wife and our son, who's always talking. He's always talking. Man, he's just talking. There he was, just so loud in the background. I said to him, "You're always just talking." There was my response, which wasn't really good self-leadership, because he's not always talking. So, but it's so habitual. When you say being present that moment between stimuli and reaction, it's a very high standard of self-leadership. That's probably one of the highest standards, if not the highest.
Yes. And what I'm saying is that you won't be able to succeed in every now moment, but just being present and just realizing what is going on in the room of your mind, that in itself is enough. We are never done in this world. We're always going to learn new things about ourselves, but being present, not being habitually reactive, seeing it for what it is. You reacted, and you can do two things. You can blame, shame, and guilt trip yourself, or you can learn from it. You can say, okay, so that wasn't actually his fault. I am overreacting. And you can learn something about yourself there. A new situation will come up. You will probably do the same thing again until it becomes habitual for you not to do so. So it's not a question of shifting from being habitual being into presence all the time. It's a question of pushing yourself in every now moment to be present as much as you can so that you can look at the moment from a higher perspective. Okay, so it's an ongoing thing. It's not something that you need to shift like that. It's impossible. You have to allow yourself to learn. It's like learning to walk.
And I guess in that moment of that present moment, if you're aware of the fact that you have responded incorrectly, and you're able to, as immediately as possible, say, sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I meant it this way. Or, then we're still present. And we're becoming more present, aren't we? So the sooner we repent or change from that behavior, the more present, I guess, it shows we are. If I only a day later wake up to the fact and come back and say, then I'm really not present and I'm not self-leading myself so well, maybe. I don't know.
No,
that's just
no, it doesn't have to be immediate. You have to allow yourself time to look at it and understand it. The understanding of it is the lesson in it. This is where you become a self-leader, when you start to understand yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have, the time is not an issue at all. Better late than never, I would say. So I feel like our society is pushing us into doing things so quickly that we think we need to fix everything very quickly. Why would you need to do that? If you figure it out 2 days later, your son isn't going anywhere. You can go to him and you can say, you remember what happened 2 days ago? Well, I've thought about this, and actually here's how I see it. And he will accept it. Every child will accept it, because forgiveness or atonement is a miracle frequency. It will shift everything and you will learn new things about yourself. So it's an ongoing ongoing thing that you have to do all the time. And it doesn't mean that you will be able to fix it every single time. If you can't fix a situation, then you need to be kind to yourself and say, okay, what did I learn about myself, without shaming and blaming and guilt tripping yourself.
Okay.
It is important to understand that what you do to yourself, you actually do to others. The way I see this world is that we are one, and I am not talking about this as a cliche. I am actually talking about it as a real thing. We are all energy. We are all one consciousness exploring this world through subjective perspectives. So you and I are the same consciousness exploring this world from different perspectives. The same consciousness is looking into the physical world through you and your desires, your purpose in life. The same consciousness is looking into this world through me, which means that if I am mean to myself, if I am not kind to myself, if I am not learning from my mistake, I live in guilt and shame, I am actually adding guilt and shame to the overall consciousness that is here. So what I do to others might be seen from the outside, and you would say, well, you're hurting someone. But if I'm hurting myself, I am doing the same thing when I look at it from a higher perspective. So becoming kind to yourself when you make a mistake, say, okay, I made a mistake, learn from it. You either learn or you win. There's a reason why we say this. There is nothing else. You cannot make a mistake and lose. You learn or you win.
Okay. Lots to explore there. I mean, if I can just grab two things. So in summary, when you say self-leadership is being present between stimuli or the stimuli and the response as much as you can be. And it's not a time thing. It's not a pace thing. It's just being present about that moment. It could be later. It could be tomorrow. I have a feeling about that. But before we go to why is this kind of definition so important in today's world, particularly, you mentioned something there about a miracle frequency. Now, everyone is interested in miracles, okay? So tell us about that frequency before we move on. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is when you forgive someone, you actually allow them to release guilt, shame, and fear. Those are heavy frequencies in our world. Those are, you can feel the heaviness. When you are in fear, your body is tense. When you are in guilt, your body is heavy. This is the expression of the frequency that you're vibing on. If I open my arms and I say, I forgive you, I allow you to raise the frequency. And like a miracle, you will feel in your body ease, alignment. This is why, and it takes no time. It's beyond time and space because it literally takes no time to do so. So when you allow others to be who they are, you are creating this space, which is vibing of miracles, because they can be aligned with who they are, be aligned to their best version of themselves. It's not always possible. People who are vibing very much in the ego frequency, who are working through ego, it might be hard to reach them because there's a shield between them. But if you have someone who truly needs forgiveness, who says, I'm so sorry I made a mistake, and you forgive them, you have created this place where time has no issue. This is why it becomes a miracle, because it gives you ease right here and right now. It's a very, very high frequency. So that is why I call it a miracle frequency. Forgiveness and appreciation and gratitude are also miracle frequencies.
Like that. So another way of looking at it is that they can cause miracles in people's lives, releasing them almost. They can cause miracles in relationships. They can cause miracles in unity, creating unity, and all those sort of things, which are miraculous in today's world, frankly.
Yes. What they do is create illumination from within, because it allows you to see more of who you are. The guilt won't allow you to do so. The shame won't allow you to do so. Fear won't allow you to see who you truly are. So if you can remove these frequencies, you allow more light. And this is what illumination is. You get to know yourself more, the real self, so to speak. And we're talking very much about knowing yourself, being in this frequency. Why is this connected to leaders and leadership is if you don't know who you are, if you're not on a self-discovery path, why would I follow you? It's like being blind, following someone who is blind. This is why I say that if you aspire to be a leader, then you have to be on a self-leadership path, self-exploration. Otherwise, you cannot lead others, because how can you be authentic if you don't know who you are? So this is why self-leadership is more important to discuss than leadership, because leadership is a result of self-leadership.
There are four universal levels, we believe, of leadership. One is leading self. That's the most important one. Building on that, leading others. So whether you're a president or a parent or anything, actually, we all do this, even if we don't have formal titles. We're always leading self. We're always leading others directly or indirectly. We're leading organization or a part of some organizational structure somewhere, and leading society outside of our formal work environment, perhaps always leading society. Some of these cross over. But if that leading self is wrong, if that leading self is out of sync, then it affects how I impact others, how I treat others, how I affect them. Your definition of self-leadership, the ultimate self-leadership, if I can call it that, of being present between stimuli and response, why is that important in today's world in particular? So I understand leading self is crucial for leaders. So let's put that first. Know yourself, how you lead, how you react, and so on. But your definition, how different would corporate environments and cultures be if that was the standard we were trying to aim at, or political landscape as we see it? So why would that kind of presence be so important?
Because it would eliminate the habitual turn to fear all the time. When you are present, you can solve things in the now moment. So the fear is always connected to doubt. Fear is always connected to some kind of complications. But if you are present in the now moment and you say, well, you know what, we don't know how to solve this yet. Instead of habitually finding a solution to any solution, just to show that you are doing something. So the presence in the now moment is so important because we are a society of habitually reactive people right now. So that's where it needs to come back to presence and time. We are not in a hurry. And yet, when you look at how things are done, there is no time for anything. So when you become, yes, so of course, and we say, well, there's so much information, we need to do this. Yes, of course, it's out there, but the stillness is inside and you have full control over it. We all have full control over it. I could sit here right now and say, okay, I'm going to be still, and I am still. So the stillness is the foundation. And yet we are always in this movement saying we have no time. So when we are present, we become aware of the stillness from within. And that puts us in a place where we can use the time in a different way. So it's connected to time in a sense. And it's a deep connection because we feel like we don't have time for anything. And as soon as you say, well, we need to do this, we don't have time to talk about this now, we have to act, then you are in reaction mode and you're no longer the captain of the ship. Response is one thing, reaction is something totally different.
So we do you think it's one of our biggest challenges in our society? And how effective do you think, if you had to give our society a rating almost, how effective are our more visible leaders at self-leadership, our political leaders, our top corporate leaders? Maybe it's different in those two categories. Are we on an up, improvement, decline? Just give us a feeling of where you think we're at.
I feel it's like a decline, because it's like a roller coaster. Everybody is in a hurry and everybody needs to make decisions because we have created a fear-based society. And when it is fear-based, you will be in survival mode, and there is no chance that you will produce conscious leaders from survival mode. And as I said in one of our interviews some years ago, the leaders that you see, they are an expression of the consciousness in people. So the leaders we choose are an expression of who we are. So we need to change our way of being. You can't change the leaders. I can grade them, but it doesn't make any difference, because we need to change our way when we choose leaders. I'm going further than that. I say that when you know who you are, you don't need a leader.
Interesting statement. By the way, anyone wants to ask a question, put it in the chat box, put up your hand. It's a small enough group, please do so. So if you are leading yourself effectively enough, you don't need a leader.
No, you might need a guide, you might need a teacher, but not a leader. You will lead yourself. What I feel, you asked me about the leaders. I don't see that they're capable of, say, transforming negative energy into a positive manifestation. Because as human beings, we are here to transform negative energy into a positive manifestation. And you gave an example of that. You snapped at your son. That was a negative energy because he was disturbing you. So instead of taking that negative energy and transforming it into a positive manifestation, you actually just allowed it to go through you, and it hit him as a negative manifestation. And then you woke up and you said, no, wait, that's not the way to do it. So you took the negative energy and then you transformed it again into a positive manifestation. That is what a self-leader does. So the key thing is to know who you are, be present in the now moment, and be able to transform negative energy into a positive manifestation. To me, it seems like when there is a negative energy out there, it is amplified by the political leaders because they want to stay in power. Because the easiest way to lead people is to put them in fear, because they will be victimized. And when you're victimized, you will look for a leader, a savior outside of yourself. And when you know who you are, you will not look for a leader outside of yourself. You will not be easily scared.
I know that Dave would go, oh, yes, yes, yes to that one. We've had that conversation before. I do want to, I don't want to move too far back, because when I do that, then I don't build on what you're saying. But, you know, I do feel the statement that says we're always leading. While we're in a leadership position and leading, we're always also following. We're always being led or always following. So you're always, let me put it this way, you're always a follower and a leader at the same time. You can never just be a leader. You're always following as well. Does that speak to the, if you're a good self-leader, you don't need a leader concept?
Yes.
Or do you agree with that statement? You can't just lead without following. Yeah.
Yes, because if you're just leading and not following, then how do you know that you're not a dictator? You have to be able to discern if there is someone else that is on the same path, that is thinking the way you are, to exchange things. Maybe you need to learn something while you are leading. Friends, I never say that I'm a leader. You introduced me as a leader. People will say you're a thought leader, but I would never ever say that I'm a leader, because I am not. With leadership comes great responsibility, and most people like the benefits of it, but they will not like the responsibility. The responsibility is to be able to look around, step down when you need to step down. And most people will not do that. So I would say that I am not a leader. I would say I'm a trailblazer. I dare to go where no one else has been. I'm not afraid of the unknown, and I will go there. And then I will share with anyone who is interested what I found. But I cannot say, I am a leader, follow me, I will give you this. I don't know what they need. So how can I say, follow me? I don't know. I know what I need, and I will follow that.
I think it's probably also a definition of leadership in some ways. And my view is, when you're your best self, you're in a leadership space. You're leading when you're your best self. Or whenever you, so that would be one way that I would say, when you're your best self, you're leading. But you're leading in principle, you're leading an example, by way of example, you're leading on different levels in that sense. I think if I say it's true that I'm a leader and a follower at all times, you can't be a follower if there isn't a leader. So you're maybe you're following principles. That's also possible. But I see. I mean, leadership is sacred. To just claim that I'm a leader without understanding certain things is a dangerous thing. And the world has come with very strange perceptions of what leadership is. And it's certainly not a pure definition, that's for sure. It's positional, it's power, it's...
Yeah. Can you help me understand, when people say, or when you say, I'm a leader, what does that mean? I really don't know. I don't understand what that means, because there is a principle, a spiritual principle, and it has to do with free will. So you cannot break the free will anywhere. So if you are leading and you're doing this against people's will, where I can see a lot of politicians are doing, you're not a leader, you're a dictator.
Yeah, I'd say you're a bad leader, not a good leader. but dictator. See, a dictator would... No. For me, leadership is movement. So when you create movement, then you're leading. Whether you're creating positive movement or negative movement, is movement. So a dictator also creates movement, but it's not in the right direction. It's not up necessarily. It might be down, but you're leading a nation somewhere, or you're creating movement somewhere, and then so that's how I would define leadership. It's not positional, but in the world we do give a position and we say you're now a leader.
But maybe that is the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the problem. When you assign someone a leadership role, true leadership will pop up where it's needed.
Yeah.
Like when the energy in a room is okay, then there is no need for a leader. Everything will work out itself. And if you assign someone leadership and the other ones are not accepting that person as a leader, then you have a bad energy in that room and it won't go anywhere. So maybe we're doing things wrong by assigning people leadership.
I just wanted to say something, Gordana, if you don't mind. Gordana, I see leadership as influence. It's almost like a football match. If I have the ball in a football match, I'm influencing the ball, the game. I've got to make a decision as to who I'm going to pass that ball to, how I'm going to do it, etc., etc. The minute I pass that ball to somebody else, they're now influencing. And as Adrian and both yourself have said, it's got nothing to do with position or authority of office or anything like that. It's got everything to do with now it's my responsibility at this particular time.
Yes. And I understand that that's a very beautiful description of what it is, but that also means that the leadership is a role that is being passed on. And if you look at politics, it doesn't look like that. Once you are in a leadership position, you use that leadership position to influence people or coerce them or force them or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think assigning someone into a permanent leadership position might be where the problem is.
Yeah.
But what happens if that person that is being assigned is conscious and therefore has, through that consciousness, has the ability to influence in a very positive vibration and a very positive energy, has the ability to do that? Would that not be good for society or for teams or for organizations or countries or whatever?
Yes, without a doubt, that would be the ultimate way of doing this.
Right.
But that puts a very big responsibility to the one assigned the leadership, because I mean, who can be objective, compassionate, fair, benevolent, and not self-serving at the same time? I mean, do you see anyone out there being this right now?
No, I don't. I think it's a challenge. But as you said earlier on, we either learn or we win.
Yes.
You know, that it's not a matter of losing, it's a matter of learning from any of those mistakes that you might make or whatever the case may be. But I think the whole idea is that we certainly need people who are able to influence in a very positive way and serve as role models or whatever the case may be to society, because we don't have enough of those role models, conscious leaders. We really don't have enough conscious leaders. We don't have enough leaders who are aware of, as you put it, what I'm doing between the response or the stimuli and the response.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%, because that is, I love the description of what a leader is, like a football game. This is a beautiful way of showing how it can be when it is at its best.
Yes.
It's not a fixed role. It's more a game, a play where you are present in that. Also, you're focused on the intention and the goal, not on yourself and self-serving or a hidden agenda that is there. So
Yeah,
I understand exactly. Yeah.
And that's this whole agile leadership movement, if you like, within organizations, bringing about the fluidity of leadership more than the position of leadership.
Well, it's interesting. I think I want to share something with you, Gordana, and get your view on it. Before I go there, I think using your analogy of a soccer game, you still have a captain of the team. Okay. And if that captain tries to have the ball all the time, then he or she wouldn't be a very good leader. But that captain allows different individuals at different moments, the defender, the attacker, the goalkeeper, to play their role. And therefore, they all get a turn to lead. But there is a leader. There's a coach as well, who's more permanent there. But we don't see enough leadership that allows different people to influence at different times. There's too much ego. And because we have such bad examples, I think we may have a misconception of the sacredness of leadership. I do see benevolent, compassionate, kind leaders. I've seen them in my life. And they are there. Invariably, they don't want position. Invariably, they want to quietly influence. They don't want to stand on the pedestal and look like they're someone that they're not. When I think of self-leadership, and this will come back to some of your thoughts, I think of three self. So I think of the true self. Okay, am I really? And that can take a whole webcast and much more to talk about. I talk about the ideal. I think of the ideal self. So the self. So who can I become based on my true self, potentially? Think of the self-image. So there's three selves there. The self-image. So my image of myself, and I think that the image of myself is a combination of my true self, my perception of my true self, and my perception of my ideal self. Then there's a lot of junk in the middle. I can almost argue when I was a child, I had a true self, and then so much influence happened in between and probably distracted me from my true self. But I'm trying to get to my ideal and best self. And then I have an image of myself. Just your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, absolutely. There is the best version of yourself, which you are aspiring to in every now moment. And it's a question of how often you remember to be connected to the best version of yourself. Because every time you're connected to this best version of yourself, every time you have a vision of it, it will express itself in this world. Every time you disconnect from it, allowing the junk, the ego, and all the other stuff in between, that would be the expression you would have in the world. So whatever it is, whatever the expression of yourself is in the world, it is telling you where your focus is. Are you focused on the vision of your best self? Or are you focused on the ego and its filters and masks that it is putting on you? And you can see it when you look at where are you in this physical world. Are you a good husband? Are you a good father? Are you a good person? Are you a good friend? Are you nice to the people around you? And if you can say yes to those, well, then you're vibing very closely to the best version of yourself. You can always refine that, because you can never lose the junk in between. The junk in between is where you learn, where you can become more, where you understand yourself. Without the junk, you will be very, very boring here. So you need all the stuff in between. But it is the conscious choosing of the best version of yourself in every moment. Understanding how to use this vision board that you have in your mind, instead of allowing ego to go there and put stuff, you, the real you, the stillness within you, the one exploring this reality, puts the vision there. And then the quantum field out there will react to that frequency and give you opportunities to explore that vision in whatever way it may think is the best way for you. So this is why it's important. The presence in the now moment is important, because that's where the choice is made.
Yeah. So how, I mean, we know the world needs more self-leadership. We can talk about that more, that ability to be present between the stimuli and the response, knowing your true self and all of those things. But that doesn't come in most family environments, which is probably where it should be nurtured. It certainly doesn't come in our schooling system, which is probably where it should be reinforced, but it won't happen. It's definitely not coming in the work environment, where it should be whatever the next level is. So how do we reverse transform? You know, we've got this principle we mentioned in our Me Vision Academy that we're slowly starting to launch, is reverse transformation, where you need to somehow transform way back to the clean version of yourself in order to come forward again in some way. But how do we get leaders to become more or better at self-leadership? Practical ways. How do I get there?
Yeah, you can't get anyone else to do that, but you can become that yourself. You can only change the world starting with yourself. And then you can inspire others to do the same. You cannot make them change. You can only inspire them. So a conversation like this is a very good start. And the people who feel the urge to listen to this conversation are probably on the same self-discovery path as you and I and everybody listening to this. So that is one way to do it. The other way is, I'm so sorry, to learn to take care of your own time, to understand that you do not need to answer immediately, to find this little pocket of time between the stimuli and the response, so that it doesn't become a trigger into a reaction. Whenever you feel triggered, this is your place where you can work with this. Asking yourself, why am I triggered? Is this an ego mask, something that comes from my past, not allowing me to see the truth in this moment, or is it something with the other person? Discerning if it's your stuff or their stuff. That's the first step in this now moment. So becoming more aware of that. How do you get to pause in the now moment? Sorry, it's the pollen and allergies here. Every time you feel triggered, that is a signal that you have an opportunity to explore who you truly are and how you can detach from the trigger, what this trigger means to you. And as soon as you start doing this over and over and over again, you will learn that there is a pause. You will learn that you don't need to answer immediately. You will learn that you have the time in your hand and you can start thinking about it. So that is one of the things. Then there are practical things, like when you feel that everything is closing in on you. You cannot make a decision because it's too much around you. You can breathe, because breathing will bring oxygen to your brain. And as soon as it brings oxygen to your brain goes, okay, there is no fear. And it starts sending signals to your body that you can relax. And when you can relax, the frequency of fear will disappear and you become, the options that are there will be seen, because you're vibing in a higher frequency and options will be seen to you. So breathing, I do this, I breathe, I can count to 5, breathing in. I hold my breath, counting to 5, and then breathing out, I count to 5. And I do this 10 times. It's like, it's a high. You get so oxygenated and it takes 1 minute to do so, maybe 2 minutes to do so. And when you've done that, you are in a better position to make informed choices, to understand the situation instead of habitually reacting to it. Then you live in South Africa. There's another thing you can do. You can walk outside. When you feel that there is too much, you just leave everything as it is, walk outside and sit in nature. Because what you need is to vibe in a non-man-made frequency. And nature provides this. If it is the ocean, if it is the mountains, if it is the forest, it doesn't matter, because it vibes in a frequency that is very high. It's almost as high as forgiveness. So it's almost like a miracle frequency. When you go out there, we function as tuning forks. So if you take one tuning fork and you have another tuning fork in the room, which is playing a tune, the tuning fork brought in will play the same tune because it tunes into that frequency. The same as when you walk out in nature, you will be tuned by nature to come close to your normal frequency, the best version of yourself. And it doesn't matter what kind of nature, where you are, you seek out nature, non-man-made frequencies. So that means not being on social media, not listening to all the people, not being on your computer, going outside. And it doesn't have to take long, 15 minutes. On your lunch break, you can sit in a park and you will tune in the right frequency. What does this allow you? Well, it allows you free space in your mind. The room in our minds, I see this as a room, and it can take as I think 7 or 8 items in there for you to think of. If you are preoccupied, this room will be filled and you will not be able to use your mind the way it was supposed to be used. This room is supposed to be used to explore visions. What we are using it for is not to explore visions. We explore fears and we explore problems and other things. But when you go outside and you tune yourself into nature, or you breathe and free this space, it becomes a tool that you can use in order to become conscious of the best version of yourself. So it's freeing that mind space. And then you have to know, and maybe this is a late hour to start to talk about this, but you have to know your non-negotiable truths. That would be the same as your guiding principles. If you are a leader, you have to be aware of what are your guiding principles? What are you not willing to negotiate away? Because when you start negotiating away non-negotiable truths in your reality, your leadership becomes self-serving instead of serving others. So knowing your non-negotiable truths. For me, a non-negotiable truth would be freedom. And this is why I cannot work where I have a boss over my head. So I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself. And I know that if I do not do this, I will be negotiating away my freedom. And that would not make me a great leader, not even a great human being. I would be in distress all the time. So I know that my non-negotiable truth is freedom. So knowing what are you not willing to negotiate away in your life puts you in a self-leadership position.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are three things. Yeah.
Those are excellent points, Gordana. Do we have enough desire in the world from leaders to want to lead self enough? Because the world rewards you whether you do great self-leadership or not. So you know, then human beings go after where the rewards are. That's the one thing I wanted to throw back at you. There was something else that slipped my mind. Do we have enough of that? Oh yeah, the other thing, very quickly before I forget, is when you say inspire others to change, I guess one of the best ways of inspiring is when you live it. So literally just being yourself and being real and authentic. Maybe that is a way of, or the best way of inspiring others to go on their own journey.
Yeah, you know, about the inspire thing, I had a conversation with my husband this morning while we drank coffee, and we were talking about leadership, and I asked him a question. Can you describe what a leader is to you? And he said something that I find very interesting. He said, a leader is someone I want to be close to, have near me, in my proximity, to be connected to. So that is, I mean, if that is what a leader is, someone we want to be close to, then that someone has to be authentic, honest, trustworthy, transparent, not corruptible. And I think that there are people that are this way. You were talking about reward, and it's an interesting thing to connect to what I just said, because what is reward? Maybe we need to redefine what a reward is. I think you were talking about monetary reward, like where the money is, this is where people will feel they are rewarded, and that's why it corrupts. Or can you talk a little bit about reward? Because you said most leaders will go where the reward is. So maybe we need to change what the reward is.
Yeah, it's positional recognition. It is definitely monetary reward. It is status reward. It's what you accumulate. You know, it's also superficial, and it's very positional. So in a corporate environment, having the next position is almost everything for most people, and that's one of the key forms of reward. And it's not based on how well, I mean, you could argue that the more I lead myself effectively, the more I will stand out, and the more I might be given more responsibility to lead or to influence. You could argue that does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it's a bit of a game in the corporate environment. So yeah, it's not as authentic as it should be. Certainly not in politics either.
Yeah, but if the reward is that you help others, then you can find leaders who are open, transparent, present, and all this. So the reward is, if it is something else, if it is self-serving, then of course we will have the leaders that are not true leaders.
Correct.
So the reward is really an important thing. How do we inspire people to see reward in a different light? For me, I ask myself, why am I doing this? And if it doesn't fulfill me, I won't do it. Even if there's money in it, I will not do it because I will not be free. So I come back to my non-negotiable truth, freedom. If what I am doing, sharing all the information, writing books, giving speeches, doing what I do, does not fulfill me, does not connect to my purpose here in life, then if I'm doing it for the money, then I am corrupting myself. And it really isn't a reward. It might look like a reward because I might have the latest car or jewelry or whatever. I can't even think of what it would be, but it would still be a corruption on a spiritual level, which will leave me empty. So understanding why am I doing what I'm doing? And if it isn't because I want to help others or if I want to serve others, then I am not supposed to be in a leadership position. I am not a leader. I am something else.
So, Gordana, I want to know from you as we head to the end now, what do you think about feedback? So I guess partly because leaders are not leading self very well, they aren't receiving feedback. What do you think would be the attitude of a leader who leads self well towards feedback from their environment, from their people, from individuals who see them and their behavior every single day? And they would desperately want to tell the leader that he or she is manipulative or he or she is too aggressive or this or that. But leaders are not receiving feedback, hardly ever, authentic feedback.
Why aren't they receiving it?
Yeah, because there's I think one of the reasons is the position. The fact that I have a perceived position over you means you are never, hardly ever going to share with me what I truly need to hear because I have influence over you. I'm perceived to have power over you. So firstly, you want me to think you're great. You want me to think that you're in control. You want me to think that you're the best at what you're doing. So you don't want me to ever feel uncomfortable about anything you say. You report to me selectively. You tell me things that I want to hear or that you think I want to hear. So position is a big issue in that barrier. But what's your thoughts on feedback? If leaders could truly get feedback, truly get authentic feedback from the environment in some way, what difference would it make in them discovering their true self, their best self, discovering who they really are, how they come across?
Enormous, if they are willing to listen. And again, there's this willingness with will in it, like free will. They have to use this tool of free will, open up and listen. And how do you make them do that? You can't make them do that. This is the whole point. Not listening, just doing habitually. If they would open up, if they would be willing to listen, then there is a gold mine for them, a real gold mine where they could dive in and come out on the other end knowing themselves. So the people that are trying to give them feedback, they are windows of opportunity to get to know oneself better. This is why I say if you're not on a path of self-discovery, you're not supposed to be a leader. Because if you are on a path of self-discovery, you will be willing to listen because you want to discover more of yourself. And if someone tells you, you know what, you come off as arrogant, you would go, why do you think so? And they would tell you why, and you can regulate that so that you don't come off as arrogant because that's not your intention. But the willingness has to be there, and you have to be on a self-discovery path. If you're not, you cannot lead. You're not open. You're not willing. Because your primary goal when you are on a self-discovery path is to know more of yourself. This includes bad information about yourself. And you know that when you're on a self-discovery path, true self-discovery path. Like when you had this argument with your son, of course, that's not a nice thing for you to explore, like, oh, that I wasn't present there. That's a flaw, but you're willing to look at the flaw because your true intention is to evolve. Your true intention is to connect to your son.
Mm.
So you let the ego has no power over you there. You will pull back and say, okay, I get it. This wasn't what I thought it was. And you change. Leaders have to be in that place where they are discovering themselves and allowing feedback to come in order to become better and better and better. And it's the willingness. Yes.
Without it, who knows where we're going? Okay, so
Yes.
before you give us a final comment to leaders out there when they listen to this, a final parting comment on self-leadership, Gordana. Any questions from anyone? You're welcome to just quickly throw up your hand or just jump in. I want to give Gordana a final thought, a moment to give us a final thought on self-leadership. Gordana, go for it. What's your final?
My final thought on self-leadership is to trust that there is a purpose with your life here and to be open to find that purpose in your life by being present in every now moment, because every now moment contains everything you need to know about yourself in that moment. So don't fall asleep. Be present in every moment, and you don't need to move fast. This is something that takes time. Allow it to take time. It's enjoyable when you look at it from that perspective, because you can't actually make a mistake. You can only learn or you can win. That's all it is to it. It's not rocket science. It's easy, but you have to make a conscious decision to be present in every interaction you have and to use the triggers that are there as opportunities to dig deeper and see who you are in it. Not to outsource and say, well, that's your fault. Keep it there where it is in your own pocket and look at it, taste it, and learn from it. That's all.
Gordana, Biernat, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to sharing it. Here's a quick comment at the end. Let's look at that. I once went to an interview for a higher position at work, and I was asked by one panelist of how self-aware I am. How do you answer? How self-aware are you, sir? And then, what do you answer? Very.
Well, that's a funny thing to ask. I mean, that is demonstrated. It's not something you answer with words. Being present is something that you demonstrate with, sitting there listening, having a conscious conversation with someone. I think that's it's a question that they probably wanted to give the question in order to show that they want self-aware leaders, but I don't think that it's a question you can answer with words. Literally, you can't. There is no gradient. 100%, no, 80%. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question, because you would need to answer something, and maybe the best answer would be to say, you know what, I believe true self-awareness is demonstrated in how you treat others and how you carry yourself and how you live. And you come with an answer, somehow how you live, what your values are, what your beliefs are, who you try to be, who your best self is.
It's a very big thing. You can answer in many, many ways. So of course there are answers. I was just thinking that it's a funny question to ask in an interview where you're very nervous and not able to answer anything. Yes.
Yeah, maybe a self-aware answer would be, well, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm very nervous in this interview.
Exactly. That would be a perfect answer. Yes.
Thank
Honesty.
you so much. Yeah, thank you. Gordana, certainly as we build this vision around Me Vision Academy inside Think Lead ecosystem, we certainly would want to connect with you on a more regular basis and talk about self-awareness, talk about the self and get people's frequencies right. Thank you for your time. All the way from Sweden. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us. There's some comment from Heidi, one of the best webcasts she's ever attended. And I'm sure many others are going to benefit.
Thank you.
So have a good afternoon further and evening. Bye-bye, everyone.